that's pretty nice.
Yeah. So, whew.
Okay. Dankest, can you repeat what you just said? Your process there. You just repeat it. Mountain Giant calculation. Here we go.
Yeah. 4 cards plus coin is 5 cards. You draw for turn. That makes 6. Mass productions plus 1. You go to 7. Draw your 8th on turn 2. Life tap, go to 9. Draw for turn on 3. That's 10. 3-mana Mountain Giant. Just like you said, Ron. Boom. Quick math.
Boom.
Perfect.
Mountain Giant on 3. Molten Giant. 2 Molten Giants on 3 potentially, or 2 if you're mega scamming. Yeah, Giants in the meta again, breaking the meta.
And
yeah.
Now we have that quick math recorded because now we're live, and we can clip that. Good
Great
clip.
And you know what? Like, it would be crazy if quick math was relevant to our topic today, but I guess we'll just have to see if that proves to be true.
Can't wait to find out.
Glorious. Oh, I should change. I'm gonna change my Discord status. That's the. Oh my gosh, I can't type. Okay. Sweet. Also, I don't know what Twitter is doing, but for some reason, anytime that I try to switch to one of the other accounts that's not my main account, it just puts it on the AFG account and then says none of my other accounts are logged in. And I'm like, what? And then when I try to log in, it says everything is wrong. It's like, no, that's incorrect.
Weird.
I'm like, okay. Thanks, Twitter. Great. That's really wonderful for trying to put out social media content. Wonderful. Thank you.
Yeah. What a great site that has only steadily improved in recent years, right?
Well, you can pay for it now. That's an improvement.
Oh,
right.
Yeah. Woo. Sure. How about now? Let's put it this way. If I have to list 20 things that I would pay for content, that would still not make the list.
Nice.
Okay. But we do have some cool card things to talk about. Are you guys ready to get into it?
Ready.
Do it.
All right. Welcome to episode 53 of the TCCG Roundtable, brought to you by the letter M. We're your hosts, Dragonrider, DankestDad, and RonMexico. How's it going?
It's going
Hey,
great.
happy to be here. It's good.
It's a nice, cloudy, rainy weekend. Perfect time to play some cards.
It's not so bad for me, but it was pouring last 2 straight days. I'm happy to not be stuck in rain. But I'm still going to stay inside and play cards. Nothing changes.
I was going to say, you can insert any type of weather. And for me, it's hot drink or playing cards. And no matter what the weather, those will always apply. Is it sunny outside?
Nice.
Perfect day for a hot drink and playing card games. Is it cold outside? Perfect day for hot drinks and playing card games. Yes, that's wonderful.
It's a good motto.
And as always, or as usual, it's Friday. Yay!
Nice.
Yeah.
We love Friday. Yes. Well, okay. So we have some cool topics to get into. I'm gonna let Dankest run through the couple of news bullet points that we have real quick, and then we'll start getting into our first topic.
Sure. So this week, of course, we have our Hearthstone Miniset released. Dr. Boone's Incredible Inventions is here. We've gotten to play with it a bit, and well, we'll talk more about that later because we're going to dedicate a little bit of the show to that. For Lorcana, Ursula's Return, it's here today soon, out live, and you can grab it at your LGS if you are lucky. Pokemon TCG Live also has their pre-release for Twilight Masquerade, and it will be coming to Pokemon TCG Live and other stores the following week. For Legends of Runeterra, the button is in the League of Legends client. That's right. After nearly 4 years of waiting, people can now click on it in League of Legends and give the game a try. So maybe things will turn around. For Universes, Girl Power pre-release is out today. And on a minor competitive note, there have been some OP changes, most notably the end of webcam tournaments in an official capacity and some modifications to dates for regionals in Season 2. So if you are a Universes player, keep an eye out for that. So now, without further ado, we can get to that fun part about the mini set. You guys been having fun?
This is why I said, okay, hold real quick. This is why I said today's episode is brought to you by the letter M, because we have our mini topic of the mini set, and then we're going to talk our main topic about mental stack. I was typing, like, looking at what we're doing. I was like, what's the title? And it was like mini set, mental stack. I'm like, mini topic of mini set, mini. I was like, there's too many M's. It's all the M's. So yeah, today's episode brought to you by the letter M, mini set. Go, Ron.
Nice. Miniset's been very interesting so far, like many of them are. There's always some kind of shakeup to the meta. And what was interesting, back in the Masters Tour, Custom Warlock, as it was being called, Pain Warlock, whatever you want to refer to it, was pretty dominant. It was everywhere, and it was very, very strong. And then all of a sudden, it disappeared. The meta shifted to a point where it wasn't playable at all, and there were way better Warlock strategies that took over, so it disappeared. Well, the mini set brought it back in a big way. There are custom Warlocks everywhere right now. It's created an interesting aspect of the meta, and I think opened up more space, because otherwise some heavy control warrior stuff might be just running rampant. But this deck, despite it constantly hurting itself and being susceptible to removal, it's so fast that slow control things can't keep up with it. They just die, because it turns out when you make like 28 plus power on turn 3 or turn 4 sometimes, it just gets completely insane, and there's not much anyone can do about it. And it is mainly centered around the new mini set card Infernal, which is a 4-mana 6/6 taunt with text that reads, set your hero's remaining health to 15. So the crucial part in that is remaining. So it's not like an Alexstrasza effect from way back in the beginning of Hearthstone, where it would just set you to 15, and that's your normal health now. So it's not like you're missing some. It says remaining to 15, so you are minus 15 on your max health, which is very important with Mountain Giant and other types of, anything besides just exactly Mountain Giant, probably not.
Molten
just Mountain Giant.
Come on.
Molten. Whatever. It's a giant that gets... That's an 8/8 that gets discounted. Yeah, Molten Giant's the card, not Mountain. My bad.
I did that same exact thing
today.
recording Dr. 3 this week too. I was like, I kept saying Mountain Giant. They're like Molten.
Yeah. Also
yes.
M, by the way.
Exactly.
Also
yes.
The theme of the day.
Yeah.
I know. As Ron was talking, like the minus stats, and I'm like M.
Yeah. It's everywhere.
It's everywhere. I'm pretty much just referring to this as like the previous Pain Warlock or Custom Warlock on steroids is what it feels like.
Yep.
Like, I don't know how else to describe it, but like it's what it was doing before, but faster somehow, or like better. And like you said, that the new card Infernal, My gosh, Dankest was sharing some screenshots, and I've seen some other screenshots, like turn 2s, turn 3, maybe turn 4, which honestly feels slow, I thought. But I was like, how consistent is this? Where you're getting turn 2s and 3s, where you're just like pumping out a bunch of stats, and then yeah, you can just hit yourself pretty low. Put some 8/8s out on the board for free, and then play a 6/6 taunt and put yourself back to 15. And it's like, oh, well, that's gross.
That's one of the other major issues with that card too, right? Is it has insane offensive and defensive capabilities. There's the cheat out your giants crazy fast move where you play that and you play like one of the treants to set yourself to 10s. You have 0 mana molten giants. Molten, got it right this time. Or maybe even or if you have the other one, but you're looking at you get really low on health and now your opponent can't try to set up the 2-turn kill, because if they don't kill you right now, they're very worried about any health total that is less than 15 and above 0, because you'll just play that other card and go right back up to 15 if they try to send some chip damage to kill you over 2 turns, because they have Sunburst but not enough. So it's very hard to beat. Sometimes you might, facing that deck, just have to say, well, they either have that card or they don't, because they don't beat that one. Yeah, so it's running rampant right now.
Yeah, and like there are a few different builds you can try. I know some players have been experimenting with demonic studies, which lets you go a little bit faster. Donna mentioned turn 2, and that's how you do it. Demonic studies on 1, coin infernal on 2, and then blood treant into as many molten giants as you have. And suddenly you've just produced 24/24 on turn 2, and even at 10 health, you're still going to win most matchups from that position. So very interesting dynamic, but there's still a lot of other things that could be explored. I can say Puppet Master Dorian and the Replicator Inator seem very powerful on paper, but not much has really come about that takes advantage of those in a big way yet. So
I did face somebody yesterday, and granted, this is one game, so super small sample size. I did see somebody that was playing Dorian. That's the name, right? You just said it, and then I blanked. Yep. In like a Sonya rogue. So they had a bunch of extra 1/1s, and yeah, they just like went off, and I was just watching all of this happen, and I was like, oh, I don't like this. I was also still kind of I was experimenting with a totally terrible. I'm just gonna say I put together a Demon Hunter list. I was like, yeah, I'm gonna be like an aggressive, hit him in the face aggro hunter with some of this cool, like, cool quote unquote stuff. No, it was bad. Don't do it. 0 out of 10. Don't recommend. It was bad. So, my deck wasn't the greatest either. I did get them down pretty low, but yeah, I just like watched them go off with a bunch of 1/1s and Sonyas, and then they were generating things, and then they were also playing Excavate, so then they got to play the Excavate Rogue thing for only 1 mana, so then they got a copy of that, and then they were playing, and I was just like, oh my gosh. I hope that's the only time I face that, because it was just kind of disgusting.
Yeah.
But outside of that, that's the only time I've seen it being used, though. So very unexplored.
The situation you're describing is probably more of like the high roll situation for them, because you probably can't really get away with running Dorian in a Sonya rogue. It's 4 mana, so it's real slow. There are possibly some builds where you can make it work, but more likely than not, it's just like, okay, that was their one highlight clip, like lucky moment where it worked. And then they had like 9 other games where they just got run over. Yeah. For instance, they queued into 2 Molten Giants on turn 3, and they're like, well, this one's a go next. My Dorian can't do anything about this.
Yeah, well, sometimes you get to go coin, Dorian, prep, 1 mana spell to draw a pirate, and you're off to the races. I think there might be something there, but yeah, Warlock is very strong, and I don't think you should take it personally if your deck can't beat 2 Molten Giants on 3. That's the world we live in.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm kind of curious. So the mini set that we just got, right, is what, 38 cards. How many of the cards, I know, Dankest, you just said that like maybe there's a few that you think are kind of unexplored or that people might be starting to work their way towards testing. How many cards from the mini set do you think are actually being used or being, I don't want to say like explored or tried, because I'm sure all of them or most of them are being tried somewhere by somebody, but the majority popular decks that we're going to be seeing if you play Hearthstone, how many cards from the mini set are really being used?
I want to say like 8. I think that people have been trying a lot of the different cards, but after the chickens have come to roost and we've seen a little bit of the gameplay, it looks like only a handful really fit in competitively right now. Am I wrong? I hope so. Do either of you guys have any counter evidence to this claim?
I mean,
So
honestly, 8 sounds high.
I was gonna guess probably around 6 to 8 probably is like a reasonable prediction for where we'll wind up for playable cards from the mini set. There are, like you mentioned, the 2 cards that have some very serious potential to be game breaking in some way or another that aren't good enough right now or don't have enough support right now, and that's Dorian and Replicator Inator. Hilarious name.
Yeah. And also to be
but,
clear on that, it's not necessarily that they're not supported enough right now, but like it has only been a few days. They might take some more time to figure out than Giant on 3, go. Some things are easier to discover than others.
Right. No Hands Gamer did make a new Highlander priest that is making use of the new priest location, Puppet Theater. And that card is, of course, incredibly disgustingly strong, provided you're not just dead by the time you're playing a 4-mana location. But it is a control Highlander priest, so it certainly has lots of ways to survive, to exploit that card. So I think that has like some potential to see play. Dubious Purchase is seeing some play in Rogue. Remains to be seen if it will be like that big of a relevant card to feature in like many Rogue lists. There's Murloc Grofin for Shaman, which does look quite good, just as an additional option for a couple different strategies, not just the Highlander Shaman with Shutter Block that can make use of it as an additional very good battle cry, like summoning 3 8/8 rushers is kind of crazy, although it takes a while and has some setup. There's Mass Production and Infernal for Warlock, which are very strong. There's Part Scrapper, which has led to some experiments in Warrior. The Foam Render for Death Knight, certainly going to be a very good card at some point. Maybe not necessarily right now, but, Infinite Weapon, kind of scary. And Sock Puppet Slither Spear is something that... it turns out is crazy powerful. If you don't remove this card, it's just it probably just goes in a sharpshooter deck. It's just a full so you run the shopper package all demon hunters basically should, because it's very good and like a linchpin to base strategies around. And then outside of your shopper game plan, you have your late game plan of play Titan and discount your hand and then play Nagas and go crazy. But if you can just stick the Sock Puppet Slither Spear early, Demon Hunter has a lot of ways to buff their attack, and this card goes insane. There's Bargain Bin in Hunter, which has been decent but not great. Product 9 probably not good enough because it requires you to play too many secrets, and secrets are bad. Malfunction in Mage is very good. And I think made the spell mage that was borderline good now actually good and playable. And it's one of the biggest like winners of the mini set. I think the no minion mage is going off. And one last thing that I haven't seen get any play that I have my eye on is Overgrown Beanstalk in Druid, which is a Treant card draw synergy card. It might still be lacking a little bit of support. Nobody's playing it. Maybe it's because it just gets run over by too many other things in the meta right now, but I think that's a sleeper card for later.
Oh yeah, it's very good, but where are your trees, man?
So, well,
there's some trees. I mean, the 1 mana card gives you like two 2/2s for one. There's still the other 1 mana card that you can summon to. Wait, do those count as trees? Maybe they don't.
They don't until they grow, until they blossom. There's Witchwood Apple; those are treants.
Right, yeah. There's Witchwood Apple, and Forest Seedlings actually takes a little while. And then Living Roots doesn't count, right? Those aren't trees.
They are not treants.
They're saplings.
Saplings, yeah.
Unlucky. Yeah, but I don't know. There's some treant synergy there. If there becomes any more, maybe it hits that critical mass where it becomes good and playable, but it's probably still a card or two away.
Yeah.
So one thing I want to point out on that is, again, still overall, this is a small sample size. I'm just looking at HS replay because I can filter by the different things. So since Dr. Boom's Incredible Inventions, which did come out this past Tuesday, we're recording on Friday, so it's been 3 whole days since it came out. So again, still pretty new. At Legend, since the mini set launch, there's 1,300 or 1,400 games with a Treant Druid, but it is showing like a 54% win rate. So it's seeming like there's something there. Again, that's pretty small sample size overall. That's filtering for since the launch and only at Legend. But it is showing potentially some promise in some areas, but I think it's still just one that's not really explored as much yet either.
Yeah.
Like Dankest said, like people are like, oh, hey, look, Paladin that was already kind of fine before now feels a little better. It's some of those aggressive decks that people are like already just going to, right? The Pain Warlock, pretty aggressive, like just build a bunch of stats. The Paladins and like Zarimi Priest, that even though Zarimi did get changed, it can still build up some good boards. And so people are kind of just, I think would just kind of flock to those things already and say like, oh yeah, right, those were already kind of there. Just start with those. And then as we get a little bit more farther out from the actual release dates, there'll be a little bit more experimentation and people will find other things.
Oh, definitely. And looking at those decks, notably, they don't even include new cards. They're exactly the same as before the
Well, the Warlock does, right?
Oh,
the Warlock includes Infernal.
Yes, but Flood Paladin and Zarimi Priest are just kicking it old school. And yeah, but like I do think there's potential. I know, like I was saying before the show, I've been playing Excavate Shaman myself with the Murloc Grofin, and that card has been stellar. So it's kind of like a hybrid deck where you either win with the big triple Grofin or Ziliax in late game, extremely early Azurite Murloc, or the Connectivity Jive combo. And Connectivity actually works really well in the Excavate package, and you can do some cool things. I am not sure how strong it is. I played that and Painlock, and I definitely think Painlock is better, but it certainly felt viable, and I was winning a lot. So, there could be some more stuff. We're just going to need more time to play enough games to find it all.
Okay. one last like lightning round question, I think, for this before we wrap up our mini topic. Gigantify, new keyword they added for this mini set. Kind of ties in because it's like the opposite of the miniaturize from the expansion. How do you guys feel about the keyword in itself? Good, bad?
It's priced to move. There aren't a lot of Gigantify cards that are showing up in good decks. In fact, I don't even think it's keyworded on the website yet, which is funny. But
I would, yeah. I don't know. Gigantify's rough as an effect as far as like something that you want in Hearthstone. Just at the end of the day, spending a lot of mana is typically bad, and spending very little mana is typically very good. So I was hyped about miniaturize because you take good battle cry effects that are stuck on overpriced things, and you like front load the drawback, you front load the cost, so that maybe you have a bad turn early, and then you have a mini in your hand to do something really powerful a little bit later, maybe all at once with something else for a huge swing turn. Anytime you have like cheap stuff, it's often good / broken in Hearthstone. So miniaturize, seeing it immediately, I was like, oh great, this is good. Gigantify is the opposite of miniaturize. I think that extends to every application of the word, meaning that it is also the opposite of good. It is bad. It is terrible. You probably don't want anything Gigantify. I will have a slight caveat that there are other cards that do like Gigantify and miniaturize at the same time, or at least have such a good effect in the early spot that you don't mind the Gigantify in hand for later. And that would be something like Murloc Grofin, specifically, because paying 1 for a 1-mana 1/1 and another 1/1 that has rush, you're pretty happy about. And then at any later point in time in the game, you get to pay 8 for 16/16 in stats, and 8/8 of that has rush. And there are some battle cry benefits that you can leverage with that if you happen to be like a shutter block deck, and you can triple the battle cry. All of a sudden, oh my god, for 9 mana, you can play a shutter block mini, and then you can play a Grofin Gigantify. And that's insane. Whether or not you're winning already because it's 9 mana, you can have a shutter block mini in hand, that's a whole other topic. And, you know, maybe you were already winning, but it's really cool to do all of that, and people aren't usually beating it, you know, unless they're like a control deck with board clears or a Reno, or we can name other things.
So I'll kind of take the opposite conclusion, even though I think we pretty much agree on all of the points. Because while all of that is true in a vacuum, there are only 5 cards that say Gigantify.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that 4 of them are competitively costed, in the sense where I think they're designed to see competitive play, and that you would consider playing the card even if it didn't say Gigantify. And I think that that's the key, right? That at the end of the day, like the 8/8 has to just be some kind of very minor upside in your calculation, because like you said, it's expensive. It may not come down, but Toy Snatching Geist, Murloc Grofin, and the Replicator are 3 cards where I don't think you particularly care about the Gigantify. It's nice, but you know, you could play them without it. Obviously, though, Grofin, you can do those shutter block combos later. And then Flickering Lightbot, the Gigantify is actively great. Assuming this deck comes together eventually, an 8 mana 8/8 that you discount 1 less for a something you've done this game, not while it's in your hand, is incredible. So Lightbot could just...
that has like less to do with Gigantify itself and more to do with the other text on the card.
Yes, and I think that kind of goes for all keywords, though. Like you can look at something like Overkill and say Overkill sucks, but
well, sure, yeah, I guess you could say Rush sucks if you stick it on a 0/5.
Yeah,
or
I mean, like
0/1.
if I showed you, like, even if I showed you Darius Crowley and was like, this is one of the best cards printed when the keyword was introduced, how do you feel about it? You might not like Rush so much. But it's
Cordarius. That was a sweet card.
yeah.
I liked it a lot.
But
I
the
was sad
context
it wasn't good.
same. But the context is everything. And, Snuggly Teddy, great arena card, but unfortunately not the most impactful and constructed. So, that one does suck. It's a 2/4 lifesteal taunt elusive. And, in 2024, that just doesn't cut it, even if it comes with an 8-mana version on the back end. So, context is everything. Gigantify doesn't sound strong intrinsically, but if you put it on strong cards, then they will be strong, keyword notwithstanding. So I think
right. I mean, I guess if you just tack on Gigantify to anything, then it's, hey, okay, that's good, right? But it's also better to not have it exist at all. Maybe that's my take. It's just I don't know. It seemed like a meme. They kind of memed about it in design, and then they put it out in the game actually as look how funny this is. It's the opposite of miniaturize.
Yeah, and I think it's pretty telling that there's only 4 of them, or only 5 of them.
Right.
I think that there's pretty limited things you can do with Gigantify, and I think they've done the cool things on these 5 cards, but it will not. I would guess it won't return again. There's not a lot of depth to it, but the 5 cards in particular are cool and probably will have a meta impact at some point in their standard careers.
Well, thank you both for those lightning round answers.
You got it.
Slow motion lightning.
If that doesn't tell you how much these guys like talking about Hearthstone and cards and the theories and philosophies behind it, I don't know what does. It's perfect. I feel like my short answer, which maybe is kind of similar to what you guys were saying, is that I think in theory, on paper, when they announced it, it was this sounds cool. But in practice, it hasn't felt effective. So that's kind of my take, my short take. Probably uses some parts of what both of you were saying, but okay. Well, if everyone's brains still have some mental capacity to keep going, we're gonna get into talking about mentality and mental stack next. Dankest,
nice.
Take it away.
Honestly, there's just a monkey banging cymbals up in here, but it's fine.
There are no signs of life here. Don't worry. I don't have a monkey. There's just some cymbals clattering around on the ground.
Monkey left.
Yeah, went home for the day. Yeah, he's clocked out.
Well, it is Friday, so yeah, he's probably I'm done. This week's over. I'm out.
Yeah. So, funnily enough, we picked this topic 3 weeks ago, right after the show. So I looked. It was April 26th, and there was an article released by Bill Stark, the design director for Universes, last night, talking about how they design with care for the mental load on newer players to try to make the game more accessible and easier to learn. And, of course, with anything like this, there's a little bit of controversy within the community. People have different feelings about it. But I find it really funny that we're doing this show today, the day after that sort of article and conversation surrounding it happened. It's nice timing. But first off, what is the mental stack? So, amount of information that you can handle and process in a given moment. And, that given moment part would imply that it comes with time pressure. And the classic example is in a fighting game. If you're standing there on the screen and your opponent is coming at you, are you going to Hadouken? Are you going to Shoryuken? Are you going to backdash? Or are you going to be asking yourself, crap, how do I press the buttons for those? Oh, shit. And then you get hit. And there's different levels to it. And players with different levels of experience are going to be at a different place with navigating the mental stack. And, we'll talk about it, but I do want to sort of put this discussion in the frame that it is never something you master. You get better and you can handle more and more. But just one of our limitations of being human is that there are not many people who are good enough, if any, to handle every possible decision and get the most out of every piece of information available to them in the time it takes to play their turn, do their move, or in the fighting game, press their button. So, yeah. So, I mean, I've got some notes down so I don't have to be alone. Ron, why don't you talk about what kind of examples of mental stack problems newer players might run into?
Absolutely. So when you're new in a game, you don't really have any familiarity with all kinds of different things that it takes a while to get used to. Things like just knowing what these cards are, what's in your opponent's deck, and someone's going to play a card, and then you have to read the card and understand what is this doing and how is it preventing you from things that you want to do or otherwise. Sometimes it's reading your own cards. Wait, what are I just pulled this deck from a website and people said it's good, and what does this do and why is it here? And then considering possible ways that an opponent could react, like trap cards or instants or activating abilities, and remembering auras and some kind of layered effects. There are things like positioning and how it matters in Hearthstone, ordering of your turn as an example, which is very important in Hearthstone, not quite as important in other games where there might be a specific planned structure you have to follow. But no matter your game, you always need to figure out, how am I approaching this and in what way, and how do I structure the order and the thinking and so many other things that as a brand new player, you don't have that level of mastery. So there are layers upon layers of complexity that you're just getting introduced with. It can be overwhelming. So you just have to build it up with time and experience and get better and learn as you go.
Yeah. And you know who gets better as they go are like veterans, card game veterans, right? So that's kind of the other side, is that, as Ron mentioned, you got to think about what order are you playing your cards in. You know, do you have to account for considering, do you need to like do a discover effect or some sort of draw mechanic before you need to do something? Kind of really just understanding all of those, calculating for that. Do you need to find something like very specific? So what is the probability of discovering that? Like, I would say in Hearthstone, you kind of have that probability of a like discover itself, like the discover effect, if you're looking for that. I know in the last Masters Tour, the first Masters Tour of this year of 2024, I was talking about that in terms of the kind of iterations on like the nature shaman, where at the beginning, right, there's less cards in the standard card pool. So that also means if you look particularly just at nature spells that you might be trying to look for, there was 16 nature spells. But then you have to consider, okay, now like the veterans know, the people playing at that Masters Tour, okay, well, cards can't discover themselves anymore. So then they say, okay, well, that takes that option out. So now there's only 15 possibilities. I get 3 discover options. And so even thinking about like the probability of finding what you're looking for, if you're going to go for a draw, what's the probability that you actually find something that you need from your deck? These are things that new players might think about, or like maybe if you have like a little bit of experience, you might think about that on more of a basic level. Say something like a legendary, like, oh, I have 20 cards in my deck and only one, Leroy. So I have a 1 in 20 chance of drawing that next. That's a kind of like base level probability. But veterans are looking way more, in depth at those kind of things. They're looking at how many different cards might fit the situation that they need. Are they looking for removal type stuff? If they're playing a combo deck, if they use that removal, can they still do their combo, right? If they use some of that damage, I think, again, like talking about nature shaman, if they had to use like a lightning bolt or something on a minion, rather than saving that for when they have a bunch of spell damage and sending it face, can they still gather all of the stuff that they need to actually have an OTK potential? And I think even in other card games, not just like digital card games, but in physical card games, I would say in maybe not in Pokemon as much, but maybe in like Magic and other games where you have to consider if you're drawing something and you have your resource cards put into your deck, like lands. Do I? What are the odds that I'm going to draw a card that's a land if that's what I need, or not a land? So veterans are kind of considering all of those different variations and different levels, and they're kind of taking the same things that new players might think about, but they're taking it to like the extreme, and they're able to account for all of that in a much shorter, faster time period because they have all of that experience and practice.
Yeah. And, like following up on that with the Amberflight Gaming, we have a teammate, Nails. And one thing that Nails has always said when I've talked to him is that one of his strengths as a player is being able to make a 90th percentile play in most situations. And, that acknowledges the fact that you can't get them all right. And even just assessing the probability is so difficult, but being able to do something that is very good, very fast, rather than perfect can be important. Like if you're playing a deck like Garrote Rogue, which was a very skill-intensive Hearthstone deck that required you to draw a lot of cards and perform a lot of game actions in a single turn, when your turn starts and you look at your hand and say, oh boy, I have a Secret Passage, which is a card that replaces your hand with some cards from your deck. I need to find this other preparation in hand with Garrote. Should I try to use my Field Contact, the deck's main draw engine, to draw cards to put both in my hand? Or should I Secret Passage to try to get both? Or should I try to draw some of the cards in my deck and figure out which one to play at which time? So, I have a math degree, and I think I could actually find you the objectively correct answer for that, given 30 minutes, a pencil and paper, and a lot of time. But that's not what you get to do in a game of Hearthstone. The rope is very unforgiving. And instead of getting the perfect answer of what your odds are in each scenario, you need to be able to both make a decision in the moment and then react to that additional information as you draw cards, see what you have, and try to change your plan. And that's very, very hard. And a newer player who doesn't have that level of experience yet can't even begin to engage with the problem. But even experienced players will sometimes crumble under the pressure, maybe not perform game actions at all, let themselves rope out. Sometimes they might make a mistake before they get to think, and they chose the wrong opportunity to take time and consider things. And it's very, very tough. The people who you see doing it on Twitch when chat is like, lol, they messed up, haha, they suck. Doing all of that and then putting the pressure of a big tournament on top of that, should not be jealous of the pressure and stress those people feel. And it's pretty amazing that they get as much right as they do. Like Pocket Train, McBannerface, those guys are machines. Just incredible players.
Yeah. I think I noticed this a lot in physical games, especially after like years of playing things like Hearthstone and some of these digital games where you have this like rope, this timer, and it's like, oh, I have 90 seconds or, however long to take my turn. And sometimes that feels like a lot. When I have tried playing some physical games, especially if you watch like some of the VODs of like from some of the pro tours for Magic, or even just watching some players play like in some videos for like Star Wars Unlimited, man, these players are playing so fast. They just like boom, boom, boom. And that's because they like have built up the repetition. They know what the cards are. They know what they're looking for. So they kind of have built in the patterns. So they don't have to worry about, what does this card do? What's my game plan? They like already do that, right? So they already know that's what they need to do, and they just do their actions so quickly. And I think there is also something to talk about there in terms of like the speed and how fast you process things and what game you're playing, because it does matter. I think there's kind of that, you've heard in terms of like Hearthstone or other digital games, Some players do get very irritated at players who go to the rope and play their stuff, right? Oh, they're roping again. Oh, that's so annoying. They need to be fast. But I would say that it's kind of almost worse in physical games. Like, I think especially at tournaments, players expect you to just like bam, 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 bam. Like, they kind of expect you to just play your turns. If you sit there and you're trying to like read your cards and think about it, I would say a lot of players in physical card games don't like that. They do not appreciate you taking your time to try to think about that. And part of that is also because in physical card game tournaments, I would say the most I've seen, or usually average I see, is like best of threes, and you have 50 minutes to play all three of those games. So you don't have a lot of time to spend per turn or per like action. Hearthstone, for tournaments and stuff, there's no time limit, right? Like, we've seen a single game that lasts like an hour and 20 minutes. But in those physical games, you have 50 minutes to play potentially 3 full games. So you don't have the time to take all those actions and take the time that you want. So you have to just know that stuff very quickly. And I would say for me, that's something that is very difficult, especially if I'm more unfamiliar. So it's kind of something that transitioning from more of like digital games where I kind of have that time to more physical, where you're sitting across from your opponent and they're staring at you like, what is taking them so long? Just play your cards. Like, you should know what these do. That was kind of a wake up to, wow, I need to actually think about like my mental load and think about this in how it's actually affecting my gameplay and how it's affecting other people in the play, and how it's potentially affecting my like tournament results, because I need to play quickly to get these games in that time limit.
Yes, and like another point on that, of the sort of multi-round Swiss format versus the way that Hearthstone does it, is that ties, which are when the match ends and it's an even result for games, are usually a disaster when you're trying to make the top cut. It's almost the same as a loss. And if you are playing game 1 and it goes 35 minutes and you've lost, then you really, really, really have an incentive to finish 2 games in the next 25 minutes. So your choices and your time need to be rationed very carefully when you're playing the game. And if you are not at the level where you have that practice, have that repetition, and can handle that mental stack, even if your play is the best in the world under normal conditions, you're going 1-1-1 and walking away with a draw or nearly a loss. And that's why this mental stack skill is so important. Because if you can finish that game 1 in 15 minutes, you're giving yourself so much better odds later down the line to have a decisive result and give yourself a chance to win. And sometimes it's not skill that separates the good from the bad in, an optimal environment. Is just who can execute the best under the pressure and who can go further up their mental stack.
Good point. Yeah, it's a very significant aspect of a whole lot of games. Just it all comes down to experience, repetition, and a lot of times, like, developing and learning some kinds of patterns that you can quickly go to, that are there, that this is correct and this is what I should do in this situation. So I don't need to dedicate any additional mental energy to this moment right now, because I know like XYZ things are going to happen this way, like they always do when I do this thing or that thing. And then I can concentrate my mental energy on something else to give myself the best advantage in a different aspect. And that type of thing, and improving that skill and developing that more and more to where it's like, okay, I've got this pattern down. I know how to spot it and execute it and then get to my other things, are crucial in success in so many different areas.
Yeah, and like front loading those decisions to either your practice or earlier points is really, really essential. Mm-hmm. And yeah, like I know, like sort of going on to our own personal experiences, like the next block of this, I'll say for me, like, it was such a big step up for me in my own games to when I started having a more long-term plan that I would make while my opponent was playing, or even just using time earlier in the game. So some people hate the ropers, sure, but in Hearthstone, you get all of this dead time in turns 1 through 4 that you're probably not going to need to use all of. And my advice and like my sort of thing is taking that time to try and figure out what my macro game plan is and then prepare myself for any complex micro that I'm going to have to do later in the game.
During that time, the monkey in my head likes to take up all of that time to just bash the symbols together as loud as possible so that no thinking could possibly occur. Oh God, it's my turn now? Okay, here we go.
Yeah. But like it's really good though to do like something like that where like I'm famously slow with my hands when it comes to these sort of things. And if you see me play Hearthstone, that might not be obvious to you because I have put in a lot of time and effort to try to be able to do some of the things I do. And while I am not quite approaching the best, I certainly can go pretty quick when I have to. And, it just goes to show that that is a skill you can acquire if you find the time for thinking somewhere else and you can just act when you have to. You guys have any sort of mental stack moments, anything where you were like, aha, had like that aha, and we're like, I'm faster now, I'm past this, I've got it. Like anything that just sort of clicked that way?
Okay, so I'm gonna say there have been moments for me that I have had like that, and then in more recent times, I have felt like I have regressed in that, which speaks absolutely to your point earlier where nobody can master this, and this is something that you like constantly have to keep working on. I think especially in things like these card games where you always have to adjust what you're thinking about because there's new cards that get added, right? Or like nerfs or buffs happen and then things change. So, the matchups that you potentially already had, like, oh, I know this matchup. I know what the cards are. Those are the times when I do the best, right? Where it's like, okay, cool. The meta is kind of more stale. Things are more figured out because I recognize those patterns very quickly. So I'm like, oh, okay, cool. I'm versus custom warlock. They're going to play this. They're going to play that. They're going to play this. I can do this, this, this. And the first like 4 turns, they're going to go like this, like this, like this. And I kind of know and recognize I don't have to spend the time and energy thinking about that and figuring it out. I know it. So the times then it's like, so for me, those are the times when I'm like, I recognize that. I get it. That mental stack and the mental load is like, oh, it's figured out. I've recognized those patterns. But then I have to shift my thinking again as soon as a new set comes out or as soon as, changes happen to cards. Because then it's like, oh, now I have to readjust because now the matchup or the things that I knew aren't there anymore. And I have to relearn everything, it feels like. So yes, I have had those moments, but also I feel like they come and go constantly.
Understandable. There are lots of resets, I think, on different levels of mental stacks that relate to lots of changes that happen in, all of the games that we play from time to time. For me, I had some like breakthrough moments that I remember usually it's like it feels like different decks and things that are the ones that I start to identify. Okay, this is the aha moment where, okay, I have these patterns kind of memorized and learned now to repeat in kind of an easier way to get to do other things. And usually for me with like a complicated deck, it comes along with trying to do some outside of personal gameplay, like studying moments, essentially, where it's like, okay, well, I'll go watch, some rank 1 legend streamer in Hearthstone, and I'll see what they're doing and why. for like this particular complicated deck, and then I'll start to see the patterns behind their thought processes, and why they did this in this specific situation, and why they maybe would do this in just like a general vacuum as the overall like strongest play or line that they're kind of going for generally. And then that helps when I start to go back to playing it myself, and I'm like, all right, so now I have these certain things already kind of pre-programmed in my head, and I can make some branching decisions from there. That happened to me before, I think, with Garrote Rogue. Even recent things like Nature Shaman was another one where it's like, okay, let me watch some top level players on Nature Shaman, see how they play it, and then I can start playing it better myself.
Yeah. And like, even you don't even have to watch other people either. It's a great idea and something you probably should do if you're looking to get better, but watching yourself is also a good one.
Yes.
And I know, like, for me, when I'm like trying to practice or improve, replay review is good. And, like, one sort of conscious thing you can do is give yourself a time limit on each turn to review it, and make that time limit get progressively smaller. So if you are like new to a deck and doing your replay review, I think for some of the harder decks in Hearthstone, you can spend 10 minutes a turn to get most of the stuff. So, like, I'm thinking like Naga Priest in the past, Garrote Rogue, Nature Shaman, like you're saying, or Boar Priest, like another tough deck. You can sit there, spend 10 minutes a turn, and even if you're still newer to the deck, if you have some kind of background, you might be able to work some things out. And then you can take a look at some different games in another session and say, all right, I'm going to give myself 7 minutes to figure this out. Then down to 5, eventually down to 2. And when you're doing it in 2 minutes a turn, suddenly that rope doesn't seem quite as short. And you might be able to just figure out those patterns that you've seen in all those replays, recognize them, and just be able to shortcut to the next thing down on the stack.
Yeah, those are really good like pieces of advice. I think for me, I've kind of done, or I think like one way that I like to practice and improve on that is a mixture of what you both said, but it's by casting. And I've casted literally like my own recorded games. I've casted just watching somebody on ladder, like spectating on ladder, casting while I'm watching literally like at the Masters Tour, right? Like the people who are single digit legend now competing versus each other, and like everything in between. And it doesn't matter if I'm just watching my replay. If I just play the replay at the 1x speed and cast it, because generally you can see the opponent's hand on a replay. I think for me, that's a really good way to also see like both perspectives at the same time. So as Ron was saying too, for me, it's like an easy way to pick up on the patterns of the back and forth. Like, oh, okay, if they play that big thing, or if that's like a popular card, then now I understand why this person is holding back on that removal, because they're waiting for that big popular card. And so then when I go and play, it's like, oh, okay, I kind of already recognize from the casting and like that kind of spectating that I should be aware of those kind of things. And so it's not something I have to spend the energy during the game thinking, what do I want to hold this removal for? What do I want to be removing with this? No, it's like, it's already there. It's like, oh, cool. This is that matchup. I want to save my removal for that exact thing. Cool. Done. Now I can spend time thinking about the next like important other things that I need to be thinking about. So that's how I think I have practiced. And for me, it's like kind of learn the most, or just like listening to other people cast. Because I think also there's one thing that I like to do, and some other casters do, is talk about the different lines of play. And that's also something like during replay analysis, right? You can kind of talk about is like, what are the different options for the turns and why they might have been better or why they might not be good. So that's like another way to also just more quickly start to recognize, oh, okay, well, that was an option, but they didn't do it because of this. Cool. And then you can learn that faster.
I like that. That's a really cool strategy.
Right. And then to close out the topic, I wanted to go with kind of a lighter question to sort of end it. So, any other activities outside of strategy or card games where mental stack is apparent to you, where you feel like you see it in another part of your life? Because for me, like I'll say rhythm games, another area where on paper, there's something I'm famously terrible at. And the first time that I played Guitar Hero, DDR, you name it, was rough. You would have been embarrassed for me. Like it would be very, very bad. But I think at this point, like I'm fairly decent at those games at least. And just, being able to react to a lot of stimulus at once is kind of cool. And it was like nice to see that progression where, it's like this green note is coming at me at, like 0.001 frames per second slowly down the screen. Where do I put my finger? Oh crap, what do I do? To, being able to play some of the songs I like on Expert and focusing more about how I'm supposed to correctly execute the hammer on or where to position my hands for notes coming up later in the song. And like, it's fun. And I like that. And for sports too, kind of the same thing where, you can get in the zone and, your feet are moving by themselves, your hands move by themselves, and you can instead focus on what other people are doing. Like I played defense in hockey growing up, and I also played a lot of ultimate frisbee, and it's really nice when you get to that level when you can focus on the strategy of the game and positioning, and when the body parts just do their own thing and get you where you need to be. It's pretty awesome.
Nice. For me, I like the first thing that comes to mind is a boring example, which is work. And it's like specifically it was when I used to work in banking, because there were a lot of different things you had to know all at once for like different kinds of loan applications. And it's like, okay, well, I know that this is one that might not have a chance to go through, but then there's an appeal process, and I can know in advance that this is probably going to go through an appeal process. So I need to like figure out, okay, what's the DTI on this, manage like this, that, and that. And if I argue that this is consolidation because this is getting closed, then maybe they'll like approve that kind of stuff. Like, and it stacks up to with experience and doing it over and over to where a process with somebody that would really frustrate them and maybe cause them to like not want to do business with the bank anymore, or even just pursue like an option that is helpful for them, they would get to do, because instead of it being a 5-week process like it was when I first did like the first time I encountered it, and it's like, here were some problems. If I had more knowledge, I would have been able to like figure out in advance and prepare for them. It was, okay, we started. They said no. Here's what we can do now. Okay, we met that requirement. They said no again. There's a new requirement. Okay, can you do this? No, I knew already. I grabbed all of the requirements up front. They said no. I said, here's some more things. Then they said yes. It took 2 weeks instead of 5 weeks. Customer was happy instead of unhappy. And that was directly a cause of like mental stack, of experience, of knowing what is happening. It's boring.
No,
I don't want to get into it.
No.
Lived experience.
I left banking for a reason, but like the
Yeah.
the applications are still like, it's still in my head. I want it out of my head, but like I memorized all these things for like 10 years of like what is like all these like proper best ways and best practices to do like the best thing I could for people, and now it's like, yeah, I don't have any purpose for that information anymore. But it was very helpful in the time, and that's like the first thing that comes to mind when I think of like other uses.
No,
I mean, you
actually,
can make anything. Oh, sorry, go ahead, Don.
No, you're fine.
I was just gonna say, you can make anything sound boring, though. You can tell people that for a hobby, you hold a nightly webinar on applied statistics, and you wouldn't be lying.
Nice. Nice.
Yeah, that sounds a lot more boring than Ron plays Hunter in Hearthstone, or Ron avoids playing Priest. But I don't know. I actually like really love this question. And at first I was like, I have an example. And then I was like, I have 3 examples. And now I'm like, I have so many examples of this. Like, and also, again, if anybody can't tell, I'm a nerd and I love talking about this kind of stuff. And I'm like, but we can tie in like card games to like this part of life. Okay, so here we go. Here's my examples. Okay, kind of tying to Dankest's sport example. In high school, I remember being on the women's swim team. And if anybody is even slightly familiar with like swimming and competitive swimming, when you are doing laps in the pool, when you get down to one end, you do what's called a kick flip, right? Which is where you, especially in like freestyle and stuff, but you kind of twist your body into like a little ball, flip yourself over, and then you have timed it so that your feet then push against the wall and you kick off to get a faster start headed back the other direction on that lap. Okay. During the season and during practice, I could not do it. I struggled with that so much. I couldn't understand it. I tried, and every time it was focusing, it's like, okay, I'm getting close. Okay, I got to put I got to tuck my head. Now, like literally I took it step by step. Okay, tuck my head, okay, roll. Okay, put more energy into like flipping my body. Okay, but then as I'm kicking, I need to be flipping right side up, or face down, I guess, facing the bottom of the pool. And there was all these steps to like how I did it. At the very end of our swim season, we had one final meet, which was like a competition. I was doing this and I didn't think about it. I had literally spent so much time over the season focused on thinking through all the steps over and over and over that during that final competition, I didn't even think about it. I just did it. And then was focused on like, okay, now I got to get back to the other side, because my only focus at that point was, this is a competition. I want to show like that I've improved and that I'm good. And so my focus was on, I got to do this as fast as I can. And then by then that mental stack of like doing the steps over and over, just like it just came to me, and I was able to just do the kickflip, go. And I think I took like 3rd in that race or something. Awesome. So it's like, nice. Yeah. So that was an example. And like literally like even my coaches were like asking the other girls like, who is that in the pool? Because I had struggled with it so much that they like didn't even know it was me. They were like, what? That's not Dawn. Like, and then, other things, but it's like, I think it all comes down to like repetition and patterns, right? So another example that I thought of was also kind of related to work. I used to work a lot of like retail, and I worked in like shipping and stuff. So knowing where buttons are on like the POS systems, right? Like when you're checking somebody out, knowing where the buttons are. Yeah, there'd be times where I'm like, literally my finger was like hovering over, waiting for the screen to load because I knew where the button was on the next screen. And then when it came to Christmas time and it's super, super busy, I don't have to think about where's the button for this? What thing do I push next? It was just, my finger was like already ready. Bam, 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 bam. Check people out, go quick. And then I didn't have to use my brain thinking about that thing during like the busy times of the year. I've also thought about this kind of stuff in terms of, I made a video like, I don't know, 4 years ago or something on like how Hearthstone and Sudoku puzzle, or yeah, I can't say that right, are like similar, right? Because when you do Sudoku, why can't I say that?
You got it, Sudoku. Yeah.
I feel like I'm saying it so weird. I don't know. So because with those, and like any other sorts of like puzzles or like word puzzles, that kind of thing, you start to find the patterns, right? You start to have that like recognition of, okay, this is kind of the order I can do it in. If I solve for one thing, I can use these patterns. I can go, okay, check, each box needs to have these numbers, but then you can go like, okay, the 3 across need to have that number these times, and horizontal needs to have that, and then process of elimination. I don't know. You could just, so it's like, I feel like there's just so many examples of how like once you go through that process of what are the steps, identifying what it is you need to think about, and then repeating those steps over and over and over, that's how you get to the point of you don't even need that part of the like mental process anymore, because then it comes automatically. There's so many examples in life and in games that you can see it. Okay.
Those are all fantastic.
I'm a nerd.
That's great examples.
You're all welcome.
I'm jealous that you can kickflip. That's another miserable thing.
I mean, I don't think I could do it now. I don't think I could do it now. This was in high school. Okay,
I couldn't do it then.
we're in 2024. All right, how many times? You know what? Like every other week, I'm like, I just age myself by like 5 years. I feel like every other week we talk about things. I graduated high school in 2008. It's 2024.
Hey, don't feel bad. I graduated in 05.
You're a couple years older than me.
2012.
Yeah.
Woo, still young.
Nice.
Sort of. No.
Nice.
Still young. We're all still young. Let's be real.
I mean, technically, if we were like athletes, we would be like 1 foot in the grave. But that's
I don't know.
That's different.
Well, but
Hey,
see,
LeBron's still going. You guys we're all younger than LeBron, right?
He's got 2 feet in the grave.
young at heart. D Nice says in the chat. Hello, yes, young at heart. But that's the cool thing about gaming, right? Is that like esports athletes, like especially with card games and like strategy games, because we're using our brains and not as much of the physical. We could be in our 30s, 40s, 50s, maybe even, and still do well. We could do it. Yeah.
Yeah, I mean,
right.
my boss at work is one of my good friends, and he's like, "So 30, when are you hanging him up?" Like, I'm always getting asked if I'm done, if I can't keep up anymore, and it's like, no, it just gets better.
Nice.
Trust me, it's okay.
Yeah.
Yeah, look, then you have the life experience to be able to compare learning strategies for card games with working in retail.
Hooray.
Yeah, there you go.
Oh no. Poor D Nice.
Okay. We should move on from aging ourselves and our poor chat.
Yeah, and I think we have a good bow on the topic there. So, thank you all for joining us this week. And if you or someone you know would be interested in joining us, please reach out to us. You can email us at tccgroundtable@protonmail.com. Follow us on Twitter. Use our top pinned tweet for a link to our Discord, or use the link in the description/show notes. Join our Discord. Check out the video version at youtube.com/channel/dragonrider TCCG. Everywhere you can find audio podcasts. You can also use our Ink Gaming affiliate to help support us directly by getting sweet merch like playmats and other card game accessories. They are pretty cool. And you can also follow us on Twitter at twitter.com/aflightgaming for Amberflight Gaming, where we have all his other content and other great players to follow, like Nails that I mentioned before. And, we got some new members too. Check them out. But as for us on the show, you can find me at twitter.com/daddankest, on Discord as DankestDad, and you can find me on YouTube at youtube.com/channel/DankestDadCCG. Ron, where can we find you?
So you can find me on Twitter at Ron_HS, and you can find me streaming weekdays, Monday through Friday at 7 p.m. Eastern on Twitch at RonMexico HS.
And then Don, what about you?
Yeah. First, shout out Gruffalo in our chat. Old chess players are often still good. Yes. Thank you. And take that, imaginary people who are saying that we're done because we're in our 30s. Take that.
You sure told them.
Yeah, I'm telling you. All right. Yeah. Get off my lawn. Shakes fist at clouds. Okay. You can find me on Twitter at DonnieDK, DAWNIEDK. You can find me on Twitch and YouTube, dragonrider TCCG. Hear me talking all things standard Hearthstone over at the Dr. 3 HS podcast. And doing all sorts of stuff for Amberflight Gaming. Getting some new people in there. It's been a hot week, I'll say, and I'm excited and also exhausted all at the same time. But yeah, apparently I do a lot. Who would have thought? I think we've talked about that. Yeah, go check it out for all the stuff.
All right. So with that, thank you all, and we'll see you at the roundtable.